One thing I've learned in my experience is BD means different things in different companies. So I'd love to just start by asking the panel, what do you guys actually do at your jobs?
So I work at Flatiron School, which is now part of WeWork. As Scott mentioned, I lead a team called Student Success, which is kind of all the non-academic components of what our students need to be successful. So my team is a lot of career and academic coaches, but the part that I'll focus on for this conversation is we're also responsible for interacting with employers. That looks like a bunch of different things, but the ultimate goal of most of our interactions with employers are to help them find the right graduates to hire for their teams. So Flatiron School trains adult career changers in software engineering, and then after they graduate from the school, we help connect them with employers to get jobs. And the BD function is working with employers, understanding what they need, and helping them connect as smoothly as possible and as easily as possible for them with graduates from the school. And I agree with all of the things that Chris said about how you should reach out. That's sort of drumbeat with my team all the time.
Hi, I'm Mike McNerney. I work for a software company that enables partnerships. So I'm the partnership guy for a partnership company. So it gets a little confusing in meetings and times in terms of what I actually do. But in terms of business development, I think of it in my role now and kind of always as how do you find new ways to bring products to market? You have your kind of traditional direct sales team, and the challenge of the business development team is often kind of your classic business roles. How do I find a new way to market this? How do I find a new way to price it? How do I find a new way to distribute the product? How do I redefine the product itself? And so that's how I define it in my current role and kind of hopefully moving forward, because that's fun when you're kind of dealing with all facets of the business.
Hey guys, I'm Kenny. Welcome to Slice. So hopefully you guys all order from Slice. If not, we help people order from their favorite local restaurants throughout the country. That so happens to be the pizzeria everywhere. And we're about, it depends on how you look at the business. It's a 7-year-old business. It's really 2.5-year-old business. I jumped in about 2.5 years ago. There was 5 of us. Today there's about 450 of us. And I am the sole business development employee at this business. It's a double-sided network and e-commerce, and in most ways, this business is powered by sales, which is going and acquiring restaurants, and the other side, let's call it marketing, that's going and acquiring customers. And in BD, I have a unique role where I'm responsible for everything and nothing all at the same time. I'm responsible for direct consumer acquisition from partners, channel partners like Google and Yahoo and Facebook, and I'm responsible for a lot of our legal and procurement stuff, which is the least fun part of business development. And I guess most importantly, I'm responsible for today a lot of our corp dev efforts, which is working with our investors and right now we're looking at potentially acquiring customers or companies, excuse me.
Very cool. So I think just from what you've heard, really BD does mean different things at different companies. It also means different things at different stages of companies. And so we are lucky to have people representing different stages of companies, but also have, I know Kenny and Mike have experienced life, and Rebecca as well, as companies have grown. So my next question is, how in your experience does the role evolve as a company starts to grow and mature and becomes larger? Maybe Mike, if you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to think about it for me, at least, is kind of managing risk. You know, when you're at a big company, your job to me was more internal, more how do I get all the right buy-in from the right players, managing risk for myself so that we've kind of done everything up front. And the smaller companies that I've worked for, the farther you go down the kind of size chain, the more it's about just execution, get it done. You know, the risk is worth taking, figure it out. So it's more of a hustle. And so two very different roles, but for me, I always think about it in terms of, my job managing risk is kind of bigger as I move up the size of the company and kind of less as I move down the chain.
Yeah, and I guess adding on top of that, it's for me, in addition to risk, it's more so like who am I selling to? So smaller company, you're selling externally, and a larger company, you're selling internally, and you're actually trying to get whatever your initiatives are pushed through.
Yeah, I think I have a slightly different take. So I am very passionate about goal setting, and it drives me crazy not to have goals. So, and part of that comes from a spark lit by Rick Clow at Google Ventures video on OKRs, which is probably like 7 or 8 years old. You should watch it if you haven't. It's an amazing video on how to set goals and align them to your company's objectives. So when I started at Flatiron School about 5 years ago, I think I was the first person who asked for an offer letter. I was like the 3rd employee. And as a joke, the CEO called me Vice Dean of Strategic Partnerships. We didn't know what that was going to be. And I think that's sort of illustrative of, at a company of that size, we were like 4 people, 5 people. Nothing exists, and so everything is progress. And so anything I did related to employers was great. Come get a speaker in, create one interview, build a panel and have employers come in, email someone, they respond to you, introduce them to a student. Everything was good. But as we got bigger, it became clearer what we needed to accomplish to drive success for the business. And so as our team has grown, the role of BD associate, there's now 4 associates and 1 coordinator, is very specific. It's quota driven, and the way you accomplish your goal, sort of the business development part, is completely open, and employees are free to kind of run towards their quota in whatever way they think makes sense and build a partnership that's really specific to the employer's needs. But the goals are really clear. And then there's this next phase of growth that we're about to embark upon, where we again have the opportunity where there's some space to have sort of ambiguous goals where, we need to engage more large enterprises. And really anything we do there would be progress, trying to understand the market, develop relationships. But I suspect that in 12 to 18 months, the enterprise business development role will be very clear and quota and goal driven. So I think, as we get bigger and as you grow through phases, there's a little less ambiguity, and what you're supposed to be accomplishing becomes more clear, or at least that's what I try to drive towards.
So it sounds like both risk tolerance and risk management, as well as goal setting, are kind of 2 of the key metrics that change the role as it grows in your experience. Very cool. The other thing I think about a lot as a BD person is relationship management. It's really hard to avoid that as part of the role. It always will be. But in my experience, that definitely means different things as a company grows. And I'd love to get your thoughts on how you approach or think about relationship management differently, potentially, as a company grows.
For me, again, this probably has to do with that risk profile, but when you're a big company or a Fortune 500 company, it's about kind of the soft power of internal politics. And, for me, building those relationships that might pay off in the long run is vitally important, but much more internally kind of than externally, right? Making sure that when you find a deal that you think is important, you have the right allies on the inside. You don't have to go build those relationships as the deal is happening. That's going to take a lot longer. It might not happen. It might get killed by somebody you didn't know had some power in the organization. And so it's a lot less about kind of the external factors, probably because the big organizations also have more power. So you just don't have to worry about that as much. Whereas at a small organization, it's about, the hustle, I think, getting out there, making sure you're developing a great external network that, pays off over time. So similar, day-to-day execution, right? You're building these relationships. It's just kind of where those relationships are being built, I think, that are important.
That was interesting about this? I'll take a look.
Well, I think I think power dynamics is a good point that Mike brings up. So when you're having come from a really, really small startup where I was chasing some pretty big partners, and they've certainly never heard of me. They've definitely never heard of my company, and I'm trying to get the attention of like a pretty senior person at this big company. I think power is very much in play here. I look forward to being at Google when hopefully at least I don't have to explain who we are. Yeah, I think the dynamic will be a bit different. But do you have any thoughts on how to, when you are chasing people down as a small, I think I saw a lot of people raise their hands for coming from early or mid-stage companies. I think Chris gave us some amazing ideas on just general communication, but just how to, do you find that you have to chase people more? Is the approach different in terms of how you approach them? I know we talked a bit about actually trying to get meeting people in person at events like this or conferences. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. So in a former life, I worked at a first-round capital-backed company called Single Platform. We built that company out of my apartment in New York City with Wiley Sorelli, who, if you haven't met him, he's incredible. A Single Platform helps local businesses get found throughout the web, mission-driven business, solely focused on helping local businesses succeed. When we started the business, no one had heard of us in any capacity. And actually, it was 2010 when we started the business. And Wiley, who is one of the founders of Seamless, I thought I could just bank off of the brand of Wiley being this big Seamless guy. Turns out that outside of New York City, no one knows what Seamless is, including today in San Francisco. Like when I have calls with companies in San Francisco and refer to some of the stuff that we've done in the past, or a lot of our team members today are current Seamless, and it's check out this great crew that we're working with. And unfortunately, that didn't work for us. The next thing we would do is we would use the brand of our lead investor in our first round, which was First Round Capital, which helped at least give us some legitimacy towards who we were and what we were doing. That got their ear, but more importantly, we like really need to spend a lot of time to understand who the person was that we were pitching and the very specific thing that we were asking, and we needed to be explicit as possible in that original ask. And especially when working with a larger organization, it took me 14 different conversations with Google to get to the right person, and to make sure that we were focused. You know, we pinged off of the entire business development organization and finally found product, like local product, and specifically the Google My Business team for the local product, and being like from a small business perspective, pitching a large business, you need to have a specific ask. Know what you're going towards, make sure that you're not wasting their time, and I guess no coffees, right?
You bring up a good point too. It's using your investors as well. I mean, you know, they have a great network, and I find a lot of time like young BD people don't pick up the phone and call the investors, but they're happy to help you. And like, you know, those guys probably hate me now because the number of times I've reached out to those guys and asked for an intro is probably more than any other source, for me personally. So get to know those guys and use them.
So for us, really any company is a prospect. If you're a company that has software engineers, we could help you, we think. And this is where I'll sort of underscore everything that Chris said about reaching out. There's an interesting aspect to this job where we're kind of managing the student pitching themselves to companies, and our graduates look very different and strange compared to other software engineering candidates because they don't have an accredited credential like a CS degree. They don't have any internship experience in computer science or software engineering. They don't have previous work experience, and so that helping over 1,000 students get into the first job as a software engineer when their resume should say nothing of the sort, says they're not qualified for the job, has actually really helped hone our skills on the employer side, where potentially someone's not heard of you, they don't know what you're selling, they don't, you don't have a warm introduction. All of the tactics are exactly the same. All of the stuff that works for students to reach out effectively to employers to get conversations that turn into jobs is the same as what works for us to reach out to partners to get conversations that turn into partnerships. And so just being extraordinarily specific and invested in the communication that you're sending and making it very clear that you want it to be easy for the other person to engage with you in a way that adds value for them. It's pretty basic stuff for us, but showing that you've done the work to research the company. There's a handful of ways in, but we're not going to go to a company that needs to hire 4,200 engineers with a diversity opener. That's about volume, right? So I think just that modicum of work that you do to reach out in the right way usually gets us the first conversation.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I think we covered a lot of this, but as people think about their careers and maybe next steps and wonder if they should stick with the early stage or move up or down in stages, any advice or things people should consider as they think about their next roles, whether they're considering a early, mid, or late stage company?
I'll go back to my sort of passion about goals. I think that the more you can figure out how to align what you're doing with the company's objectives and understand what success looks like when you walk in the door, whether it's early, mid, or late stage. To me, that's kind of the most important thing at looking for an opportunity or counseling people to look for an opportunity. How do you know if you'll be successful, and do you have the ability to do that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the big companies give you a nice logo in your resume, and you learn kind of process and how things work. But the small guys give you the scrappiness and the hustle that will stick with you. And so I think there's benefits to both, but focus on what you can get out of whatever role you're in. But the small guys, it sounds like there's a lot of them in here. When I'm hiring people, and you've been successful at a small company, there's a kind of a genuine knowledge that you figured something out and know how to get things done.
So we have 1 minute, and selfishly, I have to ask Kenny one more question. Does anyone here watch Silicon Valley, the show? All right, so if anyone watched the latest episode, there may be something that sounds a little bit like Slice that you have seen. I haven't seen the episode yet, but I'm dying to hear Kenny's story because he was actually directly involved in making that happen.
Okay, so not to leave the room. Yeah, so unofficially we have nothing to do with the episode in any capacity. Officially we have nothing to do with the episode in any capacity. Unofficially we're friends with the producers of the show, and we've been working with them for a while. And so this, we didn't know how ingrained we would be in the individual episode. We knew there would be some kind of punchline related to Slice. We didn't realize we would be the entire storyline of the first episode. And we're really glad that we were. Really great guys. They understand the startup world and community really well. Actually, the reason why we got in touch with them the first time around was from the first season of Silicon Valley, where Howard Morgan from First Round Capital was actually at TechCrunch Disrupt when they were presenting, and that's how we were connected. So really cool to be involved there. We've had a lot of people reach out. We've probably gotten more buzz from this episode than from anything else that we've ever done. And the last few days since the episode, all of our metrics are still heading in the right direction, but heading in the right direction at an increasing rate. So
there you go. Think outside the box. You never know. Guys, thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to Scott.